Hey everyone, welcome to another Manufacturing Live episode. Today I got the man of automation. I got Wade Anderson with me. Wade, tell us a little bit about what you are, who you are, what you are, where you are. How does this all work? Tell us everything.
Hey, Mike, it's good to see you again. I see that you shaved this morning for us.
I went out and used the mower this morning. It's spring. We do what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do. Well, Mike, I started a company a few years ago called SolveShop, and it kind of just grew out of the necessity of trying to find some employment after opportunity that I left kind of didn't pan out. And so we started this company because I have all these different tool sets from our background, working in industry and in the bar channel with you and back and forth in the industry. Kind of just started a company aiming to help companies improve processes by embracing technology in whatever form that technology is. We're going to embrace it and try to kind of knock down some barriers. If there's something in the way of traditional process that no one can tell us why they're doing it, then we're going to not use that. We're going to knock it down. And if tradition helps improve the process, then we'll continue to use it. That's what we're about.
So you're not really in the "we've always done it this way" camp.
No, those are like the worst phrase that you could ever get from a customer, because the people that develop the process are probably long gone and no one could tell you why they do it other than it's the way we've always done it. Why would we need to change it?
So where do you live? What part of
I'm in central Iowa, in Ames, Iowa, the home of Iowa State University. We made the Sweet 16 this year in the NCAA tournament, just so everyone knows. But right here in the middle of the country,
now,
where it's supposed to be warm and it's supposed to be spring, but 2 days ago we just had an inch of snow on the ground.
so you guys got an inch of snow. We had flurries here. I looked out the window and I was like, that's not supposed to happen in this part of the country. We're supposed to be like 65, 70.
Well,
So,
you know me, it won't stop me from grilling outside. So I'm outside, it's snowing, flakes are hitting me, hitting my grill, it's vaporizing. It was a good time.
were you in your Iowa State gear?
I'm always in the Iowa State gear. Yeah, in fact, there's some mementos back there from Iowa State and a few other things that I kind of enjoy. Big baseball fan. Cubs are gonna probably not win it this year, but we're gonna say maybe next year.
Well, so, you mentioned you and I used to work together a long time ago, but you started out mechanical engineering, right? So you talk a little bit about your history, because you and I were CAD folks once upon a time, and that's most of what we did.
Yeah, a really long time ago, I started out being an engineer. I started going to Iowa State here in Ames, and decided my path was probably not electrical engineering, probably not computer engineering, but maybe I could try this mechanical engineering thing. And so I graduated from there. I went into industry, working in private industry, working with just machine design, basically, using a lot of extruded aluminum. That was very specific, so I decided that I needed to make a career change, just because I didn't want to get pigeonholed into that industry. So I left and went to a different industry, started working with automotive OEMs, building custom parts for, well, the car that I built parts for was the 300C. I don't think that Chrysler is made anymore, but that was the car that I did OEM parts for. And then shortly after that, that's when you and I started working together in the VAR channel and solving the world's problems. And that's what we're still doing.
Yeah, it's evolved a little bit since then. So, as we talk a little bit about automation, we talk about, solving the world's problems and breaking down barriers. One of the tools that you're using is DriveWorks, right? So
That's correct. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about DriveWorks, because I think a lot of people think that DriveWorks is just that CAD modeling thing. And you and I have had lots of discussions over the years about how it's way more than that. So can you talk a little bit about how you're using those components?
Sure. That's exactly right. So when people hear the term DriveWorks, they automatically think it's just a tool that can automate SolidWorks, and it can do that, and it can do that very, very well. But it's not just a tool for engineers. This is a This is a tool that is at its heart a data aggregator, if you will, and it can push and pull data from all sorts of different silos. The great thing about SolidWorks has this what I call the solving engine. So it's solving these equations in real time, and it's producing data that doesn't exist anywhere else in the pipeline, the chain for processes. So then we're going to take that data that it produces and then just share it and spread it through various means to different processes, whether that's just creating a DXF out of SolidWorks. That's kind of bread and butter. Everyone's doing that. But can you take this data that exists to solve a particular problem, regurgitate it, juggle it up, and then send it back out so that it can be disseminated by somebody that doesn't have DriveWorks but has a different task that they need to solve for? So that's kind of where I live. Is like, yeah, we can automate SolidWorks and we can do that well, but let's move this DriveWorks out of the engineering box and put it into the center of this triangle of manufacturing, engineering, and pre-sales, and see what we can do with this tool. You've already bought the tool, let's expand its use, and that's often what happens. Engineers get involved because that's how it's sold. It's a tool for engineers, but it doesn't have to be. It could be so much more.
Well, I think back to, when we were doing just SolidWorks stuff, right? And you go out and you do a SolidWorks demo and everyone is like, oh, great, you can create the geometry. That's wonderful. But now we have to communicate this data other places, right? And oftentimes when you hear like a small company went and put in ERP in the 90s, it was because they thought that just by putting the CAD data in an ERP system, it was magically there. But what they were really after and what the benefit of ERP and MES and all those components, that we offer and everyone else offers is it's the metadata that comes from that engineering design. The CAD model is the verification validation of engineering and then can be used in machining and robotics and all that good stuff. But it's really that metadata that gets created along with it that's the power. And before DriveWorks, you and I did some other automated tools back in the day. We won't really mention, but the whole point of figuring all that stuff out is the parsing of metadata. So can you talk a little bit about how you're using that engine with
Sure.
metadata? Because to me, that's the redundant thing that everybody does. That's the process that sucks.
Yeah. So DriveWorks has a lot of outputs that it can output things to, and once you start using DriveWorks and it takes a few weeks to learn it, but it takes a really long time to master it. And everyone that uses DriveWorks is still trying to master it, including myself. But you start to look at SolidWorks geometry a little differently. You start to look at it as just a data output from DriveWorks. So SolidWorks, it can produce or DriveWorks can produce all the SolidWorks data, but what else can it produce? For instance, if there's a distance that's used or a dimension or a variable inside DriveWorks that's used to drive a part, but that same variable can be used to give information for manufacturing, we're going to share that with them and not keep it a secret. Data's been created. Let's use it and disseminate it where it's most useful. So half the battle with these tools is to figure out what information do you need and when do you need it, because people aren't looking for just straight SolidWorks data anymore. They're looking for value-added data, if you will.
Yeah.
From whatever system that they're trying to get it from, and sometimes they're using systems that aren't really geared for it. Well, that's a barrier to adoption and something that we try to knock down as well.
Well, and I think one of the things that's interesting is, you mentioned the hidden information, right? There's lots of that information that engineering uses to develop stuff. But, when we go to do quality control and we go to do machining, like there's a lot of those variables and values that need to be used downstream, that need to be like in work order instructions or shipping instructions or, all that magic. There was a question that just came in that says, how is this different than just using the standard SolidWorks app? So I think that they're talking about how is DriveWorks different than using SolidWorks by itself. I'm going to let you start with that explanation, and then I might add some comments, but you go first.
Sure. There's a, there's a lot of commonality between what core SolidWorks can do and what DriveWorks can do. The difference is going to be at some point you're going to start running into performance problems with either SolidWorks configurations or equations. When you do a pack and go out of SolidWorks, you're going to run into reference issues. The equations won't update, or the Excel has a problem in column XXXY, because you've got so many that you're trying to drive, and it just becomes unmanageable. When you introduce a tool like DriveWorks, DriveWorks was basically created several years ago. It's over 20 years old now. It was created to drive SolidWorks data from the beginning. And so it's a really nice interface to be able to kind of set up a model and drive it using rules and logic that you already have, but you just got to put it in a kind of a pen and paper place and store it. The other thing that DriveWorks brings to the table is the ability to display information to the user for input that makes sense to them. So if you wanted, an engineer can look at a part, and so I said, I need to change this dimension in SolidWorks, that dimension in SolidWorks, and this value has to go to this. But if you're somebody not familiar with the engineering behind it, or you're a new person, that doesn't make any sense to you. So DriveWorks takes that hard concept and kind of serializes it for users that are not familiar with the data. So it collects data in, it then parses through that data, solves it, and then outputs the data into various channels like SolidWorks or databases or whatever it might be. So it brings a lot to the table. I've seen people buy DriveWorks just for the pack and go aspect of it, to be able to put files, copy files, whether those are SolidWorks or text files or any sort of file, into just commonality folders that are structured in a way that it's consistent over time. And now everybody's not choosing their own folder names now from a pack and go. Like, let's call it .1 or .Mike or Mike's Rev 5. That's all being driven by input and data on the backside of DriveWorks as well.
It looked like there was a typo in the question. It was about API. I think Todd jumped in and answered a little bit too. But one of the big things on top of that too is, like, if you look at API is just an input output. When you look at what we're talking with DriveWorks here, and this is going to lead my question to you, is how an engineer designs a product or how it gets built for automation is not how the parts often get manufactured. So, when you look at bills of manufacture, MBOMs, as we call them for some of the tools that we have here, can you talk a little bit about how you can use DriveWorks to build the correct MBOM versus export an Excel from a CAD system and then handle it offline and do other things? Because ERP systems, MES systems, they need a bill of manufacture, not how Wade, the engineer, designed the part for automation to make his life easy.
Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So we as engineers tend to do things that are easy for us inside our tools, and so that leads to a BOM that maybe doesn't tell the whole story. Maybe there's some commonality between those parts in SolidWorks with a tool like ERP, whether it be Delmia Works or SysPro or any of the other hundreds of ERP systems. What we're going to do, because DriveWorks is this data aggregator, we're going to input some things on a form or collect it from various places, figure out what the commonality is. For instance, if that's part number ABC, but that has a ERP tag in it that means something else, we're going to pull that in, and we're going to start using DriveWorks to build the MBOM, and so that we can get things like what's the block that this piece of equipment's going to be machined from. That needs to be in your MBOM. That's not necessarily going to be in your straight SolidWorks parts only type BOM, because engineers aren't thinking holistically about how that part would be created. They're thinking about what shape does it need to be and what are the parameters.
Do I have to put any fillets? Do I have to put any fillets in it, right?
That's right.
And I'll interrupt here a little bit, but you bring up a good point. Like, let's say I need to make this part, right? And this part actually fits and can be machined out of a bigger block, and we happen to have that block in stock. or
Yeah.
that's a common component we use, right? The engineer is worried about the fit, form, and function of that part, but manufacturing needs to know what tooling and fixtures and components I need, and can I use it out of material that exists on the shelf, or do I have to order it? That's part of the bill of manufacture. Is the part is great, but it's one small piece of the bigger puzzle. So some of that's sort of what you're leading to there, right? Is like reading in those components from an ERP.
Yeah. Yep. So we know what the general size is and the shape is in the tool like DriveWorks, but then we can go talk to ERP systems for material usage and figure out, is there something that's on shelf 4D that this can be made from, and is the material that's on that shelf appropriate for the thing that I'm trying to create, and that may be answered by ERP, it may be answered by DriveWorks, may be answered by somebody else, but at the end of it, you can get a solution and an answer with a tool like DriveWorks to say, yes, I can make that out of this, but these are the ramifications of doing that, and then send that back and disseminate those bullet points on why that might not or might be the best usage of that material. So you've got these two tools interacting with each other to solve a problem. Whereas if you don't have a tool like DriveWorks, then it's all kind of human driven, and people are making that decision. But if you can capture some rules around it, then you can automate it, and that person that was making that decision can go do something that's more important.
Yep. Well, you have to rely on people like Mike, and nobody wants to rely on people like Mike. Let's be realistic. So, yeah, I mean, to me, those are part of the steps. And you go to a lot of these companies, and generally, it's a person that's just been there for a long time, and they make very similar parts, and that person just uses a gut feeling, right? Which was great when you could get a quote for material for 30 days. Now the quotes for material are 24 hours. Some are even less than that because of the volatility in the market, right? So you now have to be faster and make better, intelligent decisions. And it has, at the end of the day, to be brutally honest, that type of decision making has nothing to do with the CAD model. It has to do with all of the metadata information, right?
That's right. So it could be the decision between like a 316 stainless steel or a 304 stainless steel, but somebody has to make that decision, and somebody has to be aware that decision needs to be made. Whether that decision is made in DriveWorks and then the decision is disseminated, or the question is just posed. Like, hey, I'm running low on this material, but this is available, and these are the reasons why it might work. Can you make this decision for me? So it's not all full automation all the time. It's stepped automation, if you will, that requires some person knowing that they need to answer this. But that's the key, is that they have to know that they need to answer the question. And oftentimes, we don't want to wait, depending on what your lead times are. If you're just in time business, you don't want to wait 3 weeks to determine that you don't have that material, that you need to make it out of some. Can we move that decision closer to the front end and get ahead of that problem? Kind of like tennis, where you're getting behind the ball instead of on top of the ball. We want to be behind the ball and push the ball almost. We want to drive these decisions as opposed to letting those decisions drive us.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense, but I'm also simple-minded here. So
Mike, I'm just an unfrozen caveman lawyer right here.
I'm a simple Nebraska farm boy, Wade.
I thought I was a simple Iowa farm boy. You can't steal that.
We're all in the same boat, people. Come on. So there's another question that came in here, Wade. Can you use DriveWorks to enforce system and methods, drive naming conventions, structure of a model, etc.?
All of the above, yes. That's one of the great things about DriveWorks, is if you are using it for design automation and automating SolidWorks, that's kind of like the number one thing, is that you get the structure and naming conventions, and it's repeatable, and it's the same every time you do it, and it can be automated. Even that building of file names can be automated. If you're in PDM, you can use a serial number and inks up. You can do that same sort of thing in DriveWorks. DriveWorks is such a tool that it can do a lot of different things, and a lot of those different things it can do really well, and that is one of them. It can enforce rules and regulation on file names and where you put them, and just based on collecting bits of information that people already know. then it can build these rules and put those files wherever they need to go.
Well, and you bring up a good point there. You and I were both out at a company a long, long time ago, and we won't talk about Bruno. We won't talk about the company, but in the back of the room, they had a book, a legit book that when you went and built a new part, you went to the back and you logged the number and the name and the description. So when you're talking about today's world, you can use tools like DriveWorks to connect to ERP systems or any other random digital database to then enforce that serial numbering without someone getting up and walking to the back of the room to do the book, right?
That's right. Yep. That's the idea, is that you're not having to go make that decision. That decision's already made for you, so you're saving time with that manual process. But more importantly, it frees up some of your time to do something that's more important. Our goal here is to take engineers and let them be engineers again, not data enforcers of policy.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go work in engineering or any environment where all it is just monotony, making the same decisions over and over again. Let's automate those decisions and let you have more job satisfaction by doing the things that you love and you want to do at your job. It's kind of like make jobs fun again.
So there's another question that came in that's asking, well, can't you just build these rules out of API versus using a tool like DriveWorks?
The answer is you can, but DriveWorks has already done that for you and presented you with a package that you then can start. Instead of worrying about what API call it takes to drive a linear distance on a part, you're now worried about what are the rules to actually create that number. Yeah. Instead of what call do you need to bring this variable in to drive that part. So there's a lot of commonality. I mean, DriveWorks obviously on the design automation is built on the SolidWorks API, so there's a lot of commonalities, and there's a lot of people that have tried to create their own custom DriveWorks tools with the SolidWorks API. And I guess depending on how well skilled you are with programming in the SolidWorks API, you may be successful, or you may just get to the point where it just becomes too much of a burden to maintain, write new code, update the code. When you have companies like SolidWorks like DriveWorks who excel at that and been doing that for 20 plus years.
Well, I think that's my point. It was going to be my point is you can do a lot with the API. We help companies, John Milbury and myself on the manufacturing side, like write little APIs that do ABC, sure. Right? Yep. But if you're going to talk about connecting your business systems and doing all those components, could you write APIs and logic and SQL databases to do that? Yes. Are you going to pay someone to constantly maintain that, and you're going to have someone doing that full time? Yes. Is that a good use of employees? I don't know. Every company needs to make their decision, but I can say over 5 to 10 years, it's probably not the best use of that person's time. When there are tools that exist, right? Like 25 years ago, that was really the only way.
25 years ago, you were writing a design table.
Yeah.
And driving a part that way, but there are companies like DriveWorks that now have taken that out, and they take on that burden. And then not only do you get this ability to drive SolidWorks components, but it's this whole other entity that can connect databases and what do you call them? What do you call them? Digital data tables or something like that. That was a good use of that term. But if there's data somewhere, whether it's in the SQL database or even lives on a website, and you can talk to that website via RESTful commands, then DriveWorks can connect up to those tools. A tool that I've started connecting with recently in the last few years is a tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams. Like everyone is going to those tools. And so when a function happens in DriveWorks, I'm going to send a little message out to a Slack channel that says, hey, this function just happened in DriveWorks. Hey, nothing needs to happen, or something needs to happen. To let people know. Just simple things like that to allow communication flow. No one needs to be one source of all of the knowledge. Everyone would like to know what's going on, and that's what a tool like DriveWorks can do.
Well, and I mean, that's the goal of Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing, and pick a recent buzzword for those trends. But the whole goal is a single source of truth for all the data, right? And a lot of companies, and companies I've ran, are very much that way, where you start out, you have these grand ideas for keeping everything uniform, and then you hire a person that knows this product, so you buy this, and then you buy this for the next guy, and you buy this for the next person, and you go and go and go and go, and 20 years later, you have all these systems that are all special built for people that are, like you said, probably not there anymore, but they're all disconnected. So
Yeah.
if I wanted to report or an update on where we're at, I don't have anything to connect all of that information. And when you look at, tools and components that are connecting those systems, DriveWorks is one example of how that works. But the idea is you have to make decisions quick. You have to make them fast. You have to break down all of that disconnected things, regardless of whether that person had the right purpose when they bought the software, or whether they're not here and we just maintain it because, I don't know, we just maintain it, right? Which leads to the next question that came up, which is, does DriveWorks have built-in templates or best standard use cases, or for best standard use cases?
Yes. So out of the box, there are several different templates that you could leverage and use. There's a small community of us DriveWorks people that are doing this, that we've developed templates as well to kind of get you, it's kind of comparable to in the old days of EPM, the Quick Start program.
Yep.
We have built Quick Start DriveWorks projects that kind of get you going, depending on what you need to do with them. If it's a front end, a back end, like you want a full suite of, you want a salesperson to come in here and start doing guided selling, then we have templates for that. We have templates for just straight SolidWorks automation. We have templates for data communication. One of the things that we started doing a few years ago, started building Kanban boards. If you're familiar with agile software development, that Kanban is a term that is kind of spun out of there, and we just stole it. So we started aggregating data from different sources and building Kanban boards just so people can see where product and people are in the process in a visual form, using DriveWorks to do that.
And I applaud you for not putting the Midwestern A on the Kanban boards, the Kanban boards. So thank you for doing.
Well, I'm kind of in central Iowa. I mean, if you were to go a little further north, I mean, you might get that long A sound.
Well, I got to throw that out there because you have to pick up the right syllable on some of those words. So. But you bring up, there's an interesting point there, right? So there's these quick start guides, but let's talk about some of these journeys that customers have gone on, because you've had some customers that you've been working with for a long time that have gotten started, and then they do a little more, and they do a little more, and they do a little more. What's this journey look like? Because it's very different than I buy product A, I put it in tomorrow, and I get an ROI in 30 days because it just does this one thing. Like, we're talking about connecting an entire business together. So What's that process look like?
Well, the process, like it or not, it comes from the VAR channel. They tend to sell it as like a design automation tool, and it's not a fault of theirs. It's just that's what they know, and that's kind of what sells. Their contacts are warm contacts in the engineering environment. And if you're going to sell a tool like DriveWorks, you're going to chase the warm contacts, and so that's where they're at. So this isn't the steadfast rule, but most companies will start with DriveWorks in design automation. And then it will be somebody's job. It will become somebody's full-time job because they'll start seeing the power of design automation. And then it mutates from there. It grows and changes, and people start asking questions. Oh, can you do this, or can you do that? And so you start saying yes and yes, and all of a sudden your DriveWorks implementation starts growing, and it starts moving beyond just straight design automation, because people realize that it creates data and it has power to do all of these other things that are kind of looked over or not even known. So they discover that you can then turn this into a full business decision engine, whether it be providing front-end interfaces for some of your dealers to be able to even quote your own products. You allow them. Nobody wants to have somebody call an engineer up and say, "Hey, I need this quote. It's just like the thing you did 2 weeks ago, but, and all these things changed, right? So it's not just like what you did. It's completely different. And all of a sudden, that's 10 hours of an engineer's time to create that new widget because of all of the buts that the person said. So can you write rules around that and automate that? And the answer, in my opinion, and I haven't run into a situation where it hasn't been true, is the answer is yes. And so they start looking at that and like, well, what else can it do? Can I build Kanban boards with DriveWorks? The answer is yes. Can I start building, can I communicate through Slack channels? Yes. Can I do something with a SQL stored procedure that does X, Y, Z in SQL? Yes. And then what else can I share that? Yes. The answer, in my opinion, when you start adopting a tool like DriveWorks, people start looking to DriveWorks for the answer. And the reason that it is because it's so flexible. It's multi-purpose tool. It's kind of like a big pot of vanilla pudding, and you start adding these different colors into it, and you make it what you need it to be. And it has the flexibility to do that and to disseminate information. But here's the key: the person or the technology that you're trying to drive the data to, it needs to at least have the flexibility to receive it. It may not know what to do with it, but it just needs to be able to receive it. And that's kind of where the bottleneck in the chain breaks down. Is like, oh, DriveWorks can create all of this data that doesn't exist anywhere else, and it can push it. But is there a secondary piece of technology that can just accept it?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot over the years, right? Because someone will be like, well, I have product A, B, and C, and they all hold these pieces of information. Can we just connect it? And it's like, well, the only hiccup for all of this is, can it pick or receive data from a third-party source? Because if it can, sure, we can do it. If it can't, then I guess we're at the limit of whatever that software is.
Yeah.
I'll get to this next question here because this is going to be a good stumper for you.
I'm looking forward to it. You said all softballs, Mike. All softballs.
Well, this isn't my softball.
I've known Mike long enough to know when you're winking, it's going to be a high hardwood.
Well, it might be. I mean, last night, what was there in baseball? Like 3,900-mile-an-hour pitches by one pitcher, most ever. So, I mean, we got to step up our game here. But, one of the things that's interesting about when we're talking connecting this data, and it probably isn't a popular discussion for what we're doing here, but we're talking manufacturing. But, I could be a customer and not have SolidWorks. I don't know who those people are, but we could have one that doesn't have SolidWorks, and you could still have DriveWorks to connect all your business systems, right?
Yeah, there are companies that literally do that. They don't make their own products. They don't manufacture. They're kind of like a reseller of different products, whether it be small manufacturing components or anything. They've de facto set it up as a kind of an ERP system for their business. Now, is that for everyone to do that? Probably not. But for those particular companies, they haven't sniffed SolidWorks. They probably even don't know what SolidWorks is other than hearing the name. All they know is DriveWorks is this data tool, and it can produce data and receive data and send data in all various formats. And so that's what they leverage for ERP-like systems. If they're small enough that they don't really have the resources to take on a big ERP-like system, then they'll turn to a tool like DriveWorks because they've heard that it can do all of these things. So that's kind of what we're about, is like sharing this information to get people to realize that DriveWorks is just not a straight SolidWorks automation tool.
Yeah,
it does all of these other things, and it does them well.
And this is what leads me to this question. Okay, can DriveWorks do your taxes?
Let's see here. I just did my taxes. And if DriveWorks could save me some money on taxes, I'd be willing to set it up.
So you're saying there's a chance?
There's always a chance.
So a lot of the companies you work with, they do design and manufacturing. In the, gosh, I don't want to date us, but we'll say 10 plus years to be on the safe side. how have you seen, these companies evolve, especially like in the Midwest, right? Like how have you seen that transition happen from what it was when you and I were first doing automation stuff to where it's at now? What are the challenges you're seeing them faced with?
The challenges are no longer who can build the best model in SolidWorks. It used to be that it was such a small little community that you had to go find the best person to build a model. The challenge today is not necessarily the model, but it's like you said before, it's the data, it's the metadata behind the model. So companies right now are kind of in that midst of struggling. It's not just a SolidWorks CAD model, but it has all this other data behind it. An interesting thing that I've seen is, with several of the companies that I've worked with, that it allows them to, a tool like DriveWorks allows them to kind of semi-automate processes that they didn't have before. For instance, if you get something that comes in DriveWorks, you can set up DriveWorks to tell you, is this full custom? So it needs somebody engineer to touch it, or can it go full through the process? That sort of thing didn't happen anymore, and people set it up to kind of take out the custom of their business. But what I've seen, which is really interesting, did not see this coming, is that because we're automating so much of the standard stuff, the custom side of their business that was such a painful thing for them to do has now become a resource driver for them. It's where they start to make most of their revenues in the custom stuff, because they're no longer doing the custom stuff because the automated stuff is doing the standard stuff. They can do the custom stuff again.
So you're freeing up the time because you're allowing full Skynet on one side, which allows then the T1000s to do their job on the left, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Totally didn't see that happening. That I thought, okay, we're automating some of the custom stuff that you saw all over and over again, so you could do some more engineering. But it turns out that we're automating that stuff so you can do more custom stuff that pays more, that gives more revenue, that's more benefit to the company.
Well, you're actually using the people you hired, you're using their minds to solve the custom things, which is what they were actually brought there to do, right?
Right. Yeah. Nobody wants to sit in front of a SolidWorks model and change a length to 5 because the salesperson or somebody requires a 5-inch longer bolt or widget. Nobody wants to do that. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I know that you love doing that, so that's probably more for you than me.
I'm so rusty in my demo days, I probably couldn't change a 5 anymore.
I think you could still turn a box into a circle if you tried.
I could do a box and lid demo for you, Wade, if you want to see that.
Hey, the standard barrels are never go out of style.
That's right.
That's still a classic SolidWorks demo that I think people should use because it's pretty powerful.
Hey, there's other CAD systems that still can't do that technology after 20
plus
years. So, yeah. So, as we talk about the evolution, we talk about people, what are you seeing from, you're in a college town. I'm in a college town now. What do you see from like the next generation? Like, the kids coming out of Iowa State, mechanical engineering, are they wanting to go into this type of, doing the automated things and focusing on where their skill sets are, or, because it's a little different than when you and I were first learning the CAD stuff back in the day?
That's a great question. I'm getting a little grayer, a little less on top, so it's really hard for me to kind of pinpoint what people want. I mean, I'm having trouble with that with my own kids. So, but I can tell you that the art of maybe critical thinking is kind of lacking in the industry. So I would like to see our new generation of engineers. You almost have to retrain them to think critically because they're taught to mash buttons and expect certain results. And then in our day, if a refrigerator broke, you and I are fixing that refrigerator.
Yep.
In today's world, we throw out the refrigerator and we go get a new refrigerator.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the state of what I've seen, and it's not everywhere, but especially here, it's like we just throw out the refrigerator. Why would we want to repair the refrigerator? There's no value in repairing the refrigerator. That's somebody else's job. Yeah. But you can learn so much by trying to struggle through repairing a refrigerator, and nobody really wants to go onto that struggle.
Yeah.
And that's hard for me to say, and it's hard for me to understand. But and that's, again, it's not the whole case for everyone, but kind of general feel for it.
Well, I mean, I think some of that, listening to you talk about it, I think some of that is the result of, growing up with a cell phone versus not, right? Because we went through the growing ages of, you know, Windows NT4 Service Pack 6, Windows 3.1, Windows 95, Windows XP. There's so much stuff that didn't exist back then, right? So we were on the cutting edge of like, oh yeah, this button works, but don't push that button or it'll be a bad day. Versus now everything just sort of seamlessly connects, right? And I think that's where there's needs for people that are critical thinkers to be able to set up these tools like DriveWorks and some of the automation components that go with it. But the reality is that some of the benefit of those automation pieces are to cater towards the next generation that doesn't really want to think about it, right? I mean, isn't that sort of what you see out there? Because it seems like it to me when I think about skills gap and some of the things that are happening.
Yeah, that's couldn't say it better myself. There's an area for that, for sure, to be able to set the next generation up into a different, and it doesn't mean it's better or wrong, it's just different.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, I think it's too early to tell if it's good or bad. we need more.
We probably won't be around to know if it was good or bad. So in 30 years, guys, gals, sorry.
We're also getting to that point where we're the get off our lawn people. We're the old grouchy puppets in the balcony.
we're the crusty guys that have we became the people that we didn't want to become. Yes. We're kind of like our parents in the Progressive commercial on TV.
Yeah. Well, we need to park close to the exit at the football game so we can leave in the fourth quarter.
That's right. And then we need to comment on how big the parking lot is.
Yes, exactly.
As if it matters.
Right. It's like the old school of the certifications, we were the handwritten certification people, not the fancy software certification.
Yeah, I do have to catch myself. I'm like, well, what test did you take?
Yeah. So,
and then I realized, it doesn't really matter. Nobody cares.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It just makes you and I guys have something to talk about and laugh about.
Yeah, exactly. There's another question that's coming in, which is, does DriveWorks have a free trial and what training resources exist?
So that's probably a question more geared to your SolidWorks reseller, but I can tell you that every package of SolidWorks ships with an express tool for DriveWorks. It's not full featured. Don't expect it to do a lot of the things that we're talking about. It'll kind of get you foot wet into SolidWorks automation. I think additionally, you can go to the DriveWorks website and get DriveWorks has tiered packages just like most software companies. The middle package, which is DriveWorks Solo, I think you can get a 30-day trial right from their website without having to talk to anybody. But if you're really serious about creating a business decision engine, you will go straight for DriveWorks Pro or Professional. And you'll have to talk to your VAR about what options are to use that tool. Yeah. DriveWorks is sold through the SolidWorks reseller channel, by the way. If you're wondering if that question comes up, you'll just talk to your VAR. They'll have all the information about the different modules of DriveWorks and what they are and what they do and how much they cost.
Yeah, well, and we're talking about the more advanced stuff because this is manufacturing live. So the point of this automation component is to tie into the downstream use, right? Because it's great to design products. You and I have made a lot of money over the years working in the design realm, but the reality is everything that gets designed has to be built, whether it's additive, subtractive, welding, whatever you want to do. The point is it has to become real. And the big gap that happens is once the data is done in engineering, it has to be translated. So ERP, MES, CAM, robotics, plant layout, shipping, receiving, that's really, what we're talking about here is using that engine because, again, you and I have had these discussions for years of engineering and the data that's there is very, very critical and needs to happen. But the where it falls apart is that communication after it leaves the engineering department.
Yeah, we're trying to capture as much. So one of the things that DriveWorks can help with is that there are some things that need to happen in data for manufacturing, whether it be like, oh, this part grows beyond 24 inches, it needs this additional feature in SolidWorks. But that can drive the SolidWorks part, but do we need to tell ERP that actually happened? And so we're trying to take these tools and push them beyond this little box that says you can only do SolidWorks automation with this. We're if there's something that someone on the shop floor, the manufacturing floor does over and over again, and they don't complain about it, that's the thing we want to try to automate.
Yep.
In DriveWorks or whatever technology bit that we use to connect to it.
Yeah, well, and sometimes those changes have big ramifications. Like I had some automation when I was doing recycling where, steps have to meet an OSHA requirement, but then there's also that funny little thing of it has to fit on a semi to ship. So those are pretty big things of like, I have to keep my guidelines and requirements happy from engineering from an OSHA standpoint. But the bigger problem is if we're going to build it and put it together, it gets shipped on a truck. Yeah. So how much it weighs, how wide it is, how long it is, how big it is, those things are very, very critical before any piece is ever cut. And that's often information that when you're doing those custom type components doesn't get relayed very well. And then it's well, crap, we have 14.6 on our height, and when we put it on the truck, it measures 15 foot. That's a problem because that can be several $1,000s of permits, and you can only drive it during the day, and all of a sudden it's delayed, and there's people on site that now charge you $8,000 a day because it didn't make it there.
Yeah, some places in, let's be honest, some places in Nebraska, that's a bridge getting out.
Yeah. Yep. The bridge and the cattle will be all over the place when you go through. So, but I mean, those are big things. Like we shipped a bunch of stuff to the Bronx, and there's all those requirements, right?
Yeah.
And those are things that, engineering thinks about the OSHA component, but the rest of the company has to figure out how to get it there and avoid those fines. And, often that stuff gets missed.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that you can write. You may not end up in a SolidWorks model, but you could make decisions with a solving engine like DriveWorks to help with that information. Can it be made out of one continuous piece? Does it meet all these requirements? And if it falls out of one of those requirements, then it needs to go into a full custom route. Doesn't mean we won't allow the SolidWorks geometry to be built. It just means that needs some additional attention after the process is completed.
Yeah.
You take the information that you knew, you take the information that shipping knows, and you take the information that manufacturing knows, and you try to combine it together to create information and help everyone in the organization.
Yep. Which then also feeds scheduling too, right? Because,
sure.
I mean, if it's a custom one-off thing, that can affect the schedule as well.
Right. Yep.
And then, the bosses and accounting and all the fun stuff where, it's a great idea until it has to be built and it costs 3 times what you thought it was going to cost.
Sure. Yep.
So
nobody likes that decision. No. Nobody likes that surprise last minute.
No, that's like your parents calling you by your full legal name.
Oh, that's bad.
Bad. Those are the discussions you don't want to be called into the office for.
When they use the middle name, you're in trouble.
Yeah. It's even worse when you get up there and you sit down and there's a pink paper that they're holding. So we're getting closer to the end of the hour. I have a couple questions just because I asked this to Christina and Dick in the last one where we had some people from the channel on before. What is the strangest place you ever did a demo? Like one that stands out, memorable.
Man, we did so many. I remember walking into a building. It's not all that strange other than the fact that the things that were happening. Like burlap walls appeared in a lot of demos. And even like smoke-filled conference rooms, people were smoking in demos was pretty bizarre. I did a demo in a car once.
Okay, elaborate. You didn't tell me about the car one. You told me about a dirt floor once.
Yeah, that's so we were I think it was just a last minute. We were actually on our way to a demo, and it was you could connect to, phones were around then, so you could connect via tethering, and so that's how I did the demo over GoToMeeting for a company that just wanted to see something real quick. That was weird because there's no room for a laptop in a car, so it's up on the dash. It's at an angle. They could probably see this much of me. It was just bizarre. So that was probably the weirdest place, other than there's a lot of land in Iowa, I thought, but then I started traveling Nebraska, and there's even more land in Nebraska.
Yes. Well, I mean, you guys till it up and use the field of dreams, so we had to make up for that over here on our side to overcome all that acres that you guys plowed under.
That's right. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that we're gonna do here at the end before I let you go, Wade. First, if you do like this episode, please like and subscribe. We have these every month. If you want to catch previous episodes, you go to live.solidworks.com. And the biggest thing that Wade and I have been talking about offline also is we have Manufacturing Day coming up here at Metal Quest in Hebron, Nebraska. I believe there will be a link down in the chat to take you to the landing page. We're going to talk about using SolidWorks data downstream, but technically it works with any CAD data. But Metal Quest is a SolidWorks customer. We're going to talk about robotics, plant flow optimization, some of our high-end machining, collaboration. You talked about the Kanban boards. We have some tools with 3D Lean where we can enhance that. And we can even plug in some of the components that Wade talked about today into the 3D Experience platform to connect all of the manufacturing pieces together. So
is this a free event, Mike?
It is a free event. It's even open to students. So we've invited a lot of local students. So please go register. If anyone is thinking about manufacturing, automation, robotics, doing some of the things that Wade talked about, with connecting components, we're going to be showing pieces of a lot of that. And then Wade, how does someone get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you for getting more information on DriveWorks and what your company does?
You can just send us an email to info@solveshop.com.
And your website is solveshop.com, correct?
Solveshop.com. Yeah, we're in the business of solving.
That's good. So I can't thank you enough, Wade. It's been good to catch up. You and I always have fun being the grumpy old Muppets. So I appreciate it, man. And we'll have you on sometime later. Maybe we can show a few things.
All right. Thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Have a good day, everybody.